love to take the opportunity to let anyone know if you're in the East Coast and you're on I-95 over this weekend or next weekend, you are more than welcome to join us here at the Keystone Truck and Tractor Museum for the Titans of Transportation Trains, Trucks, and Tractors Train Show. Been a pleasure to be here today. And I just got done talking with their founder, Keith Jones, and he was so proud to see Daniel Chou presenting and being the guest host from his conference room today. Just want to say thank you to you guys. Come on out, see the trains, trucks, and tractors.
Okay, well, I'm going to let Daniel introduce himself. We were talking about having guest hosts, and Daniel raised his hand, so I'll let him tell you about himself and start the program. Daniel, go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, and I'd also like to extend my thank you to Razor Gillette, the members of ZoomTRAK, and the NRail newsletter for allowing me to be here today. If you hadn't heard from John Mark before or today, I'm a member of Richmond area NRail or NTRAK. I've been a member there for about 2 years, and I work for a small railroad company named RailServe in their Richmond facility in South Richmond. I mostly model N scale, but I also do a little bit of HO, and I model the Great Northern Railroad and the Northern Pacific Railroad between 1945, the end of the steam, or the beginning of the end for the steam era, and the early Burlington Northern era, right about till 1977. I have a little presentation I'd like to share about the current Keystone Tractor Museum show. I know John Mark did a pretty elaborate tour of the show so far, so I'm just going to keep it quick and I'll show a little track plan for it. Let me just pull that up real quick. All right, so essentially, Keystone Tractor Museum Train Show. This is the second annual Keystone show. The dates this year are July 15th and 16th and July 22nd and 23rd. It's located in Petersburg, Virginia at the Keystone Tractor Museum. We have several layouts, including RadTRAK's T-TRAK layout, RadTRAK's NTRAK layout, the VPNC HO scale loop layout, the River City 3-Railers O scale layouts, the Sailor Bob or Bob Griggs layout. He was a famous 1960s era media host who starred in kids shows similar to shows of the era. And there's also several other layouts and displays, and of course, plenty of tractors. Here are some pictures from last year's train show at Keystone. Just some scenic pictures of my train going around the layout. And some setup photo shoots. Here is the track plan. On the left is our RanTRAK's track plan, including the 3 peninsulas that John Mark mentioned and the various modules. And on the right is our T-TRAK layout. Finally, we have the shirt, which is a really interesting design that Keystone designed, including a steam locomotive. It's a Pensy 462 Pacific steam locomotive, and the Pensy used a logo which had a keystone on it, which really fits our tractor and train show at the Keystone Museum. That's all I have out of the slideshow right there. Today, we'll be hosting 3 hosts today. Firstly, Talking T-TRAK with Terry Moore, Automated Cato Switches with Thomas Rackers, and finally, the Colorado Midland layout with David Moeller. So with my introduction complete, I'd like to hand it off to Terry Moore with Talking T-TRAK. Terry?
Pardon me. This is going to be a little bit different this month. This subject came up as a result of a response to our ZoomTRAK polls. Somebody asked how to include a transition between T-TRAK, NTRAK, and FreeMoN for inclusive club membership and small local shows. The best way, in my opinion anyway, to join the various modular formats is to go round and round in circles. This is my idea for a T-TRAK to NTRAK situation. Round and round in circles means the use of a helix. The T-TRAK loop representation on the left uses a large junction, the new large style junction that has that extra piece of straight track. Using the red track only, with the red track in a counterclockwise direction on the T-TRAK layout, the trains leave the T-TRAK layout at the bottom, taking that right-hand curve, going up the helix on the outside. The outside helix loop must always be up due to the less grade angle that it creates. Then exiting the helix, you go into a similar designed junction that would be custom built for the NTRAK layout. it also has that extra piece of straight track. Only the red lines are connected. The NTRAK layout would also be operating with the red line in a counterclockwise direction, which means a single red bus could be used for both layouts. Of course, you may want to split it into districts. With this simple situation, there are no intricate wiring or fancy technology required. Now, as I mentioned, the original question also mentioned FREMO-N. Well, Talkin T-TRAK is about N-scale T-TRAK items of interest to N-scale T-TRAK modelers. This topic actually came up years ago when I was asked by a friend about joining NTRAK and T-TRAK modules together in a layout because of the continuing loss of NTRAK modules due to the migration of NTRAKers to T-TRAK. But at this time, there is a plan to connect FREMO-N also. So here are my thoughts, one man's opinion, about that possibility, aka Talkin T-TRAK extended. Again, the biggest problem joining the three modular formats isn't the various standards, it's the different module heights. Without the availability of a long, straight incline, a circular incline, a helix, is necessary. Combining T-TRAK and NTRAK has been a topic for discussion for years. Like I say, I was asked about this about 5 years ago. Unless you have removable legs that fit into pockets under the NTRAK modules, shorter legs could be used. Cutting attached NTRAK module legs is not really a good long-range plan. Raising T-TRAK tables has also been done, but availability of those spacers limits the number of layout tables available, thereby also limiting the number of modules that can be invited. Longer legs under NTRAK modules would lift to FREMO-N height. In the diagram, on the left, of course, is the original idea from T-TRAK to NTRAK. Then you get out of the NTRAK loop with another one of those suggested modules leading into another helix and rising up to the FREMO-N level. FREMO-N to NTRAK helix. The helixes involved here are of your choice. I'm not about to do a helix article. So again, as I mentioned, it shows the NTRAK loop out through the junction, up the helix, into the FREMO layout. The NTRAK layout would become an end loop for single track FREMO. A reversing section, auto or hardwired, may be required. FREMO uses in my suggestion, uses a double track module. Again, use the single red bus for both layouts. Again, could be split into districts. Since FREMO is often point to point, a double track terminating module may be used to allow runaround moves to reverse the direction of trains, single or double track FREMO. A similar double track module could be used for a FREMO to NTRAK interface, as shown here. Again, over the years, many helix designs have been published, and I'm not about to do yet another. But Lee Williams published this excellent design in the NRail newsletter of July and August of 2020. That article outlines the design and construction of this helix purposely built to connect T-TRAK layouts to NTRAK layouts. But it features a far more complex wiring requirement than my more simplified suggestion. So, For T-TRAK, ordinary off-the-shelf, large junction with the straight track between the curves, no modifications. May require cathode to flex track adapter. NTRAK requires a custom-built junction module based on a 4-foot straight, perhaps. May require cathode to flex track adapter. The same junction module could be used for FREMO-N connection or a second for connecting all three formats. The need for a cathode flex track adapter depends on the track used in the helix. FREMO-N, standard 2-track straight module or slightly modified to allow run-through operation. Code 80 to 55 track adapter may be required. With this suggestion of mine, all trains may stay in their format layout or pass through the junctions into and out of the neighboring modular format as desired. There are no destructive modifications, which is cutting legs on NTRAK modules, perhaps. And there are also no limiting special pieces, such as the risers, if we're going to raise T-TRAK tables. I'm a firm believer in what I call community layouts. Now, cutting legs or creating those lifts could be done within a club environment where all the same layouts and all the same situation is encountered all the time. And outsiders, non-club members that may have modules built to the individual standards are not invited. So then you could just simply do whatever you wish for cutting legs or raising tables. And you would just simply be using all the same modules all the time. Now, the NMRA Texas Express National Convention and the National Train Show in Grapevine, Texas is expected to have a combined layout of T-TRAK, NTRAK, and FREMO-N displays. I'm actually quite looking forward to see how they accomplish their interconnections. Thanks for watching.
That was a great presentation, Terry. Does anyone have any quick questions for Terry Moore, real quick? Give it a few more seconds.
I'm also available to answer any questions about the Helix module that I built.
So I have a question. So is it really, it's still an exploratory mode as far as the best interconnect between the three standards? Meaning nobody's really got anything that's yet cast in any kind of goo, stone, or sand?
What do you mean by cast in goo or stone? Because there are FREMO-N to NTRAK Helix built. It's in St. Louis right now.
Okay, but so sort of coming into this in the middle, so it sounded like there was, the presentation was about some ideas on interconnects, which led me to think, or I guess ask if there's still an exploration going on.
There has been one of each Helix built, and they will be in the National Train Show in August.
Okay.
The connection to the NTRAK just uses a standard NTRAK junction.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Williams, and thank you, Terry Moore, for the answers. Now we're going to hand it off to Mr. Thomas Rackers, who's sitting across from me, actually, about his automated Kato switches. And I'll hand it off to you, Mr. Rackers.
Okay, my name is Thomas Rackers. I'm a recent, as of like early this year, member of NTRAK, also a past member and past president of the Japan Rail Modelers of Washington, D.C. But I've moved from the DC area down to the Richmond, Virginia area. So NTRAK is now the local club. I'm still a member of the other club. I've also been dabbling in electronics and computers for well over half a century. So the computers have gotten considerably smaller, and I'll be showing you some of these. A specific interest You probably have at least heard of Arduino microcontrollers, and I've been playing around with how to incorporate those in various ways into model railroading. And today I'm going to be trying to do a short presentation. Gonna try and fit it in with within 15 minutes. So wish me luck on that. On a specific application that would be using Arduinos to control Kato turnouts. And my outline here just blanked. Hold on just a second. Okay, there we go. So now for reference information, I have a blog that one can look at. Here's the web address for it. And it looks all wordy, but it's just modelrailroadelectronics.blog/ and today I'm going to be talking about one specific page, switch machine controllers. But there are many other pages on other areas, so feel free to look. If you happen to have a dual screen computer right now, you could actually watch that page while I'm doing the presentation, or watch it later on. If you happen to be a person who likes dabbling in Arduino codes, and I know there are some people who do because there's a Facebook page, Arduinos for Model Railroaders. I have a GitHub repository where I put my codes for public consumption, and you can see that address down below, github.com/TWRackers. W is my middle initial, that's why that's in there. So feel free to take a look at those, and if you don't get those, ask me later and I'll give you the link again. So let me share. Okay, back to the camera. Very good. All right. So let me give a real quick description of Arduinos. Okay, now Arduinos are not considered computers. They're just microcontrollers. The difference is the amount of memory in there is much smaller. They don't have all these peripherals and drives connected to them unless you connect them. More importantly, unlike your Windows or Mac computer, they can only run one code at a time. The most common Arduino is this one at the bottom. It's called an Uno, and you can see about how big it is compared to my hand. And it's got header connections across both edges here. It's powered by USB. This is hard to do when it's not mirroring. USB power, or you can use the little round jack here. Now this is, like I said, this is the most common one, but Arduinos are made by many manufacturers with different names and different sizes. In the prototyping board up here, it's an Arduino Micro. Runs the same codes, it just has a different variation of connections. This one's actually plugged into the little prototype board. The reason I'm showing you these is because the demonstration I'll be showing is using two Arduinos, one of each type that I'm showing you here. So now the context here, why I'm doing this is because I got involved with T-TRAK, and T-TRAK in its original configuration is built around Kato's Unitrack, and preferably N-gauge, which is where I like to work anyway because it's more compact than HO and O and such. And I've been living in apartments for many years, so I don't have room for a real layout. So I'm doing this around N-gauge Unitrack. So the thing I'm working on or showing today is specifically just switch machines. I've also dabbled with throttles, train sensors and such. You can find that stuff on my blog. Right now, I'm just trying to keep the scope down. Okay, so Unitrack switch machines are fairly simple. It's just a red and black wire pair, and those connect to the two ends of a coil that's in the switch machine. You run current through the coil one direction, little magnet in there moves one way, the switch is one way, run the current the other way, it moves, and it goes like that. Very simple. Okay, this is very important though, is that when you operate these turnouts, you cannot just run the current through and leave it on, because you have to use 12 volts. It's like 0.6 amps. That's like 7 watts, or about the equivalent of those old style screw-in Christmas tree light bulbs. And you know how hot those get? You try to run that kind of 12 volts for more than a second or so through one of these turnouts, and they will melt on the inside. So you have to hit it with a pulse just long enough for it to switch, and it's done. So that's where an Arduino comes in handy. Usually people use a little mechanical switch that does that sort of pulsing thing in its mechanism, but I want to be able to do this under computer control. So that's where this is going. Okay, now Arduinos cannot put out 12 volts at 0.6 amps. So you have to have some sort of little driver circuit that can take a 12 volt supply and switch it the way the turnout likes. So you can get these parts, and I've had made up little circuit boards. These are the same layout. It's just a matter of what part is on here. This is just, nope, sorry, this one. It's just a simple chip. It's a motor driver chip. I'm used to doing this in front of mirrors. Okay, so that's just a simple driver chip, and that's what I will be using in my demonstration here, because I've got a whole bag full of them. Same pin or connections on the outside, but this is a breakout board. This can handle a little bit more current than this one, and the reason is because this one can handle all Kato turnouts, with one exception. They're a double crossover. Doesn't have a coil. It has 4 coils in parallel. So it takes 4 times the current to switch it, which is too much for this chip to handle. This one can handle that. Side note, this part actually, not the board, but the little breakout board here, sells for about $5. That chip sells for about $9. So you can go with this and cover everything for a little cheaper. But like I said, I got a whole bag full of those. I've only got half a dozen of those. So these are the driver modules that actually drive the coils on the turnouts. Now, the Arduino comes in because we have to feed the signals to these to actually switch the current to create those pulses. So that's where the Arduino Micro, the smaller one I showed here, comes in. It's running what we would call it a program, but they call it a sketch. That's like, takes too long to explain why. But anyway, this runs a sketch, which is a switch machine controller. A copy of that is on my GitHub. So if you'd like to look at codes, you could pull that up. So I can show you real quick. I mentioned those 2 pages. I should show you real quick what they look like. Share. Okay. This is my blog. This is specifically the switch machine controllers page. So it's got lots and lots of stuff on here, including circuit diagrams and such. So way more information than you'd need. I also, then this is my my GitHub, and you see here right off the top is the switch machine controller sketches folder. So the codes that are inside that little Arduino Micro are there. So anybody can download that and make use of it. It doesn't have to be that specific Arduino. Just about any Arduino can do it. Okay, so did I miss anything? No, it did not. Okay, now, so the controller has one job. It gets a command, say, that switch on channel 2, throw it to the main direction. That one that's on channel 4, throw it to the diverging route. And that's all. It doesn't know anything about the layouts and such. It doesn't have any operator controls. That's where the other Arduino comes in. And what I've whipped up for this purpose is a Okay, let me share this again real quick. Come on. There we go. I've got a touch panel. This is a 3D printed panel that's got 10 of these little touch sensor things. So you just put your finger on it and it generates a digital signal that can go into an Arduino. That is the actual panel. And this is the other Arduino mounted behind it. And you can see, I'm pointing at my screen and you can't see that. Sorry. But there's two boards down here at the bottom. The lower one is the Arduino. And then on top of that is a shield that has all my connections to these little touch sensors. And then you can see there's a sheet of cardstock on there, which has the actual pattern. So, and then this, I don't know if you probably can't see my cursor. But if you look at the bottom center of the screen where you can see the USB cable black, there's also a white, red, black servo cable coming out. That's the communication cable to the micro that's actually controlling the turnouts. Okay, now this is the thing I'm controlling. Now this is just a test setup. So yeah, the wiring is kind of a rat's nest and such. Ordinarily, all of that wiring would be done much more neatly under a T-TRAK module. But right now, everything is just put on top because this is just a breadboard setup. So this is from above what we're going to be looking at. And let me change angles here. About center is the Arduino Micro. And it's got a cable coming in that's communications from the control panel. And then it's got two bundles of wires going out to those driver modules, left and right. And from those are the pair of wires that are going to the turnouts, and also pairs of wires. You can see two of them here, little sort of handmade Dorf signals next to the two of the turnouts, but there's actually four of them there. So those are shots of what we're going to see. I'll stop this, and I'm now going to switch cameras. Yes, there we go. Okay, this is live. So okay, this is the front of, you saw the back view of the touch panel. This is the front. So there are 10 touch spots. Each one of these is in front of one of the sensors. And I am now going to power up the whole thing. And both Arduinos are going to start up at the same time. And you can now see the signals, and all the turnouts have set themselves to their straight through direction. And you can see that easily on the one that's in the front. But the others are all on the straight routes also. Now, the touch panel is very easy. I can switch. Okay, so and I can do that with any of them. And like I said, it's just a short pulse. It's like 20 milliseconds long pulse is all it takes to throw those. So if you had a panel and you wanted to control the your turnouts individually, you can do that. But if say this is the one end of a yard and you want to select a specific track, you just touch over here. The Arduino that's down here knows this layout, so it can do smarter things. Like if I want to send a train down this way and just touch this, and oh, I need to only switch this one. It doesn't care about these. So you saw that one switched. If I want to send a train down track 2 and touch this, now the first turnout is switched. The second turnout's already set to its diverging route. You can kind of see the points, but definitely the signal's red. Actually, they're all on diverging right now. If I want to go down to track 5, this is going to be a little bit more involved. Okay, it's now set all the others besides that first one to main, and you can follow down and you can see that the train would follow this path. I wish there was a better way to so you could see the points well, but rely on the indicators showing correctly. Except for one little detail. Somebody comes along and flips the little switch on a couple of these. That's hard to reach. Yeah, there we go. It has no way of knowing that I just did that. The signals for the first two turnouts and the points do not agree. But the computer down in here remembers how it set them before. Well, what do? It puts them back where they were. It says, I don't know where they are now. This is where they're supposed to be. So now this is just a simple demonstration of the thing, but they work. One could make this bigger. One thing I did not mention is, or maybe I did. Correct me if I'm wrong. The little Arduino micro that is down here, that is controlling the actual switches. And it's at the end of a three conductor wire from this Arduino. But I could take another 3-conductor wire to another one of those with a different address, and I could control both of them independently. I could have a couple of dozen of them strung one right after the other, all controllable individually. So I could make this bigger. And if it starts becoming too many, well, there are ways to work around that too. But anyway, this is the basic concept where I have right now manually controlled Arduino that can throw these switches. I could put more intelligence in here and have it doing things automatically based on, say, track sensors, saying there's a train coming down this track, throw this switch or whatever. This is just one part of the puzzle. Believe that covers everything. Let me check my notes here. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I think that ends the actual presentation. I am open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rackers, for the presentation. I really enjoyed that. I'd like to learn more about that later. Casey Bartman from Walterboro, South Carolina asked, I've been working on a similar project with ESP32s and L298N motor drivers. What are you setting your PWM frequency to for the controls? They asked.
So let me read that again. Okay. L298 motor drivers, say PWM to for the control. Okay. Are you talking about for the touch controls or for controlling the turnouts?
For controlling the turnouts.
It's just a simple pulse. The motor drivers, there's 3 signals going into each half of the motor driver. One for the red wire, one for the black wire. So that sets the polarity. And then a third signal. And when it goes high for 20 milliseconds, that turns on the drivers, and the other 2 wires energize current flows, and that pulse shuts off and the current stops. So there is no PWM frequency.
Okay.
If you check my blog, I probably described that stuff in way too much detail. Only reason why it's so much detail is because half of my audience will be model railroaders who don't know a whole lot about electronics and computers, and the other half is people who know a lot about electronics and computers and don't know much about model railroaders. So I'm trying to cover both bases.
Hey, and I'm kind of like you in my background. I'm doing it in MicroPython too, because I have a kid that's, you got to do in Python and not C. So anyhow.
Python is cool too. Yeah, Arduino codes are written and they say C. It's actually C++, but I'm not telling.
Can you give me a rough idea what it cost for the components that you have for this particular layout?
Okay, well, now the larger Arduino here, and this touch panel, with that Arduino is about $25, but I could just as easily have put a Raspberry Pi with a touch screen there, and I would have replaced this larger Arduino and the entire thing here. But then I would have been talking about Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, and that would be a bit confusing. So that's why I did it this way. But the Arduino Micro is just one of several possible chips that are about the same size and the same capability. Those tend to run, oh heck,
All right.
$10–15 and such. It's a whole bunch of little pieces. I really haven't added it up.
Thank you for the time, Mr. Rackers. I'd like to get to David Moeller's Colorado Midland.
Yes.
So we're short of time for this section of the meeting.
Okay.
Now, thank you for the comments. I'll be moving on. Next up is David Moeller's Colorado Midland N scale layout. David Moeller.
Daniel, it's David Vollmer.
Oh, David Vollmer, my bad. Sorry about that.
Yeah, the name should be right there on the screen there.
Oh, there we go. David Vollmer. Take it away.
Okay. Not entirely sure what all you'd like me to do. I will say this, my N-Scale Colorado Midland was just in this most recent issue of N-Scale magazine, the July-August 2023. So if you are a subscriber or if you see it on your hobby store stands, you'll see there's a so kind of an exposition there on the layout. So my primary model railroad is it's a 12 by 14 foot HON3 Rio Grande Southern. So I live here in Colorado, so it was kind of a no-brainer to do the narrow gauge. But some of you guys have been around for a while might remember I used to do the Pennsylvania Railroad at N scale, and I had done it on a hollow core door and did a couple articles for N scale magazine. Did great model railroads in I think 2013, 2014, something along those lines. And then I moved to Colorado and I kind of got into doing the Colorado Midland. So as you may know, when you model turn of the century in N scale, there's really not a lot to work with. So behind me on the layout here, there's quite a few of those MDC Athearn old timer 280s, some of the again MDC Athearn truss rod, box cars, refrigerator cars, passenger cars, and so on. Quite a few resin kits, the resin and metal kits from fine N scale models that are also representative of turn of the century rolling stock. So my model of the Colorado Midland is not by any stretch meant to be an accurate representation of the Midland. So I spent a lot of time in the other room on the wall behind me, behind this layout, trying to meticulously recreate the Rio Grande Southern, in some case tie by tie, weed by weed. And so this is my Wild West fantasy layout behind me here. It's only 3 feet by 6 feet, and that was meant so that it would fit in the back of my Honda Pilot so I could take it to train shows. It's 2 independent loops. The trains just kind of go on their own. It's DC for 2 reasons. One, for a layout this small, DCC seemed kind of superfluous, and 2, those little teeny tiny engines. I mean, I've done it before where I've installed Z-scale decoders and N-scale steam, but it's not something it's not something I enjoyed. So one thing I can do, because right now I kind of have this little static thing going on where I've got the layout behind me with my laptop here. If I'm allowed to screen share, I can take you to the Facebook page I maintain for my layout and show you some of the scenes up close. Is that something that sounds good?
Go right ahead.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I'll take you through some pictures you can see here. This is on the side here. These are some scratch-built trestles. The Colorado Midland had quite a few wooden trestles. And if you're not familiar with the Colorado Midland, let me back that up just a hair. It was a very short-lived standard gauge railroad that was built in about 1883 through about 1885, 1886, and lasted until 1918 here in the state of Colorado. It was the first standard gauge railroad to cross the Continental Divide in Colorado. And unfortunately, everywhere the Midland went, the Denver and Rio Grande had already beaten them. And so they spent most of their corporate life basically fighting for their life. At various times, they were owned by the CB&Q, by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, and at one point by the Denver and Rio Grande. And it's there's still a lot of evidence here. I live in Colorado Springs, and there's a substantial amount of evidence of the railroad still in town here, even up in the mountains. You know, the grades are still visible. The Hagerman and the Busk-Ivanhoe tunnels that crossed under the Continental Divide are still very much there. And a lot of the railroad is now road. When the Midland was finally sold in 1920, its roadbed gave way to some of the first decent highways in the state of Colorado. So anyway, my layout represents roughly the period, I say 1905, but it could be anywhere from 1890 to the end of the railroad's life at the end of World War I. The Midland did have quite a few wooden trestles. They also had a lot of steel trestles. So these trestles are scratch built. I built a little jig based on a plan that a friend of mine shared from the Midland's engineering department itself. And so I scratch built these from wood, you know, and it's not that difficult after having to build all the wooden trestles for the Rio Grande Southern on the other side of the wall there. I figured I could do it in then, and it just means smaller wood. But otherwise, you can see the old-timey equipment here, some mining scenes in the back. So it's not really, oh, yeah, let me show you this. So you can see it fits in the back of my Pilot. And it's really a show layout. I'll take it to shows in the local area here, kind of show off what N-Scale can do. And of course, because it's a hometown railroad, you know, people are actually, even though it's been gone, well, 103 years, they tore it up in 1920. People know what it is around here. So it's kind of fun to show it off. Let's see, here's another scene here. A lot of the structures come from Wild West scale models. They build some amazing Old West architecture buildings. And I really think it would be difficult to pull this off without having those kits available. I do scratch build when I need to, and I have some scratch built models on the layout, but if I had to scratch build them all, I'd still be working on it. Here's just some more shots. That's a heavily modified Bachmann 460 on the upper loop there. Actually, the boiler was lowered and the tender was replaced by a friend of mine, Chris Schmuck. You might know the name. Chris does Erie and N-Scale, but he also does a lot of HON 30 work. There's sort of the over-under. That mine in the background is built from plans. Guy by the name of John Campbell, he's the president of the Slim Rail Club here in Colorado Springs, of which I'm a member. And he published plans for the O-scale version of that in Narrow Gauge and Short Line Gazette many years ago. All I did was scale it down to N, took the measurement on my O-scale ruler, flipped it to the N-scale side, and just built it in N. So yeah, again, turn of the century kits, especially like mining stuff, you're not going to find a lot in N-scale. So some of this is a roll your own. This steel bridge right here is a heavily modified, as you can tell, it's a microengineering steel trestle kit. I did, in fact, replace a lot of the members with music wire because these trestles were built for light locomotives, not for heavy stuff. So, and then, of course, I added the curved deck and so on. And then on the lower deck, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you can see my pointer down there, but that's a, oh gosh, that's an RS Laser Kits wooden truss bridge. There's a better view of it. So you can see what that looks like. So, you know, it's, again, sort of a Wild West fantasy layout. This is meant to look a little bit like the city of Aspen back in the silver boom days. So some of the structures in town are models of the structures that existed in Aspen, but it's not really meant to capture the size and the layout of the city, just to give me a name to add to the layout that would be authentic. Also, if you're wondering, where do I get my decals? Okay, these passenger car decals, if I could zoom in, these came from Republic Locomotive Works. Some of you might be familiar with those guys. I don't know if he's still in production. I know I had heard he'd had some health problems. And then, yeah, same for the locomotive. I had some custom decals made from an HO scale model company that shot me some N-scale versions who focused on the Colorado Midland. And they went out of business like within weeks of me getting my decal. So I got lucky. If you do want to model the Colorado Midland and N-scale for any reason, you do have the option now. K4 Decals offers a pretty impressive line of Colorado Midland decals that you can use. There's just more. This was taken at a show in Pueblo, Colorado last year. So you can see I've done quite a few of my rail cars up as Midland. You can't really buy anything off the shelf that's Midland, with the exception of a couple of cabooses that Athearn produced. Athearn, for some reason, gave their cabooses what would have been boxcar numbers on the Midland. So I, of course, had to renumber them. And again, I'm not really trying to be super prototypical here, but just having some fun with it. And you can see how easily it fits in the vehicle there for transport. And then there's my case full of trains. So here's the overhead shot. You can see there are two independent loops. Each one has its own, and you can see if you look behind me, each one has its own Kato power pack, Kato, I mean, tomato, right? And they just run independently. So at a show, I can run them for hours on end and just, talk to people and let the trains do their thing. I do have passing sidings on both levels, and that just makes it easier to change trains out during the show. I do have a couple sidings here that I could conceivably use for operations, but I never really designed this for operations. And you can see the tracks do cross one another inside the tunnel. So just a few more shots here. Some of the bridges that I've built. I will tell you this, and these trestles do need their fire barrel platforms. If you're familiar with wood trestle construction, you need to have those barrels out there in case there's a fire. One of my pet peeves, I'm going to go off on a soapbox here for a little bit, is when model railroaders don't pay close attention to actual engineering standards when it comes to building bridges. So for me, I'm not an engineer, but I did used to teach physics, and I think about, what good railroad practice is. And one of the things that kind of kills it for me sometimes is when I see on a layout that could be beautifully scenic, but the bridge looks like there's no way I could support its own weight, let alone the weight of a train. So that's one of my pet peeves. So I had answered somebody's thread on bridge engineering on a Facebook group or something. So that's what this group of photographs are from. So you can see it's really meant not only to mimic prototype practices by the Colorado Midland, but general sound engineering practice of the late 19th, early 20th century. And there's just sort of the power packs and so on. By the way, the track, if you're playing along at home, I'll see if I can zoom in here a little bit. This is Pico Code 55. And the beauty of the Pico Code 55, beside the fact that it's as robust as it is that wider tie spacing really does a good job of representing much earlier track work. It's hit or miss as to whether you can pull it off to represent modern railroad track or transition era. But for something from the 1880s, 1890s, it looks pretty good. And it is really robust and it's available. Some track lines are hit or miss. So that's always good as well. I will say that the bridge decks, if I back it up a little bit, the bridge decks, that is micro engineering code 55. And so I had to do a little fun, like filing the web on the Pico Code 55, which is really Pico Code 80 with a double web to fit the joiners on for the bridge deck. But you can see it's a much more realistic effect by having proper bridge ties on the decks. I'm sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. We had a 2-day neighborhood yard sale going on, and I've been basically speaking for the last 48 hours here. So, all right. So there are a few more shots here. Rock work for me is a combination, anything I can get my hands on. In this scene, it's mostly hand carved. I do use commercial castings, and by that I mean actual finished cast rock, not casting rock myself. I really try to keep the weight down on these things, and honestly, I've never had a lot of luck with the mold releasing the way I want it. So I'll use precast rock, I'll rubber rock, and I'll hand carve. So I would say the layout is a little more than 50% hand carved. The rest is all commercial castings. So you can see a little bit of sort of the train collection there. And this was a little shot I took just because I took one of those Bachmann Crapmaster old timer gondola cars and wanted to see if I could make it look like something I could use on the layout. And it's not great, but it's passable. So, and this was running a track leaner car. So you can see it's definitely it's meant to be a show layout, nothing super prototypical, but I do enjoy trying to make the trains look at least mostly like Colorado Midland practice. So lots of pictures there. If you're out on Facebook, just Google N-Scale Colorado Midland and you'll find me. You guys have any questions right now? I see something in the chat. Hang on.
I must say, I love the layout. I really do.
Great. Here, let me go ahead and stop share. Thanks. N-Scale has such a great scenery to trains ratio that doing something like, the high Rockies in a small space is actually doable. Oh, somebody said, how did I do the stone wall? If you're referring to this stone wall right here, you'd have to ask the good people at Chou. That's just a flexible, one of those flexible stone wall castings.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Dave here? Or David, rather. Or Dave. My bad.
I go by Dave. I go by Dave. Yeah.
Thank you.
David, if I'm in trouble. All right. Well, hit me up in the chat if there's any other questions. And like I said, you can find me either in this most recent issue of N-Scale magazine, or you can find me on Facebook. As much as Facebook is kind of, you know, it's not a big fan of it anymore. It's just really easy to do layout updates on it and just upload the pictures directly. And then all the model railroading groups that are out there. So that's kind of the main reason I'm still there. But at least for the foreseeable future, you'll be able to see my layout updates on Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming up to the July ZoomTRAK meeting, Dave. I'm glad that we were able to see your great, magnificent layout. The Colorado Midland is one of my favorite railroads. Do we have any last questions for the meeting?
Daniel, I'd like to throw up the survey, and while we're doing that, just mention to people that if you go out to the to our NRail.org site, we try and keep this up to date. If you find any problems, let us know. But specifically, if you go to the store, you will notice that number one, the number of cars that we have left, special run cars, is very limited. So if you want one, you need to order the cars now. The other thing is that we also have this 50th anniversary celebration that we'll have down in Grapevine. We will have a banquet. It says it starts at 6, but in fact, we really won't get things started until about 6:37 because the show doesn't close until 6. And Jacksonville Terminal is going to be providing a special container to the first, I believe it's 100 people who sign up. So this is something that I think is going to be kind of special. It's not often that an organization has a 50th anniversary, especially a model railroad organization. Also, I encourage everybody to fill out the survey. And I think that's about it from me, Daniel. Does anybody else have any announcements?
Let me just say that if you are staying at the Gaylord, they have shuttles that'll take you over to Wilhoit's.
At ZoomTRAK next month, I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes to those of you who are bringing trains to run on that multiple T-TRAK, N-TRAK, Fremo N layout.
And it's not too late to sign up for a module now. So if you've got, especially T-TRAK, if you're thinking about it, you're going to be there and you've got a T-TRAK module. T-TRAK modules are real easy to transport. Sign up. Just send an email to layout@nrail.org and we'll get you all set.
I also have one more I forgot to add when I was talking about the Midland. If you're in Denver for the 2023 National Narrow Gauge Convention at the end of August, my HON3 layout will be open, but I will also have the Colorado Midland on display.
All right. Looks like we don't have any more questions for today's meeting. I'd like to thank everyone, including Razor, Gillette, Bruce, and the NRail newsletter team for allowing me to be here this Saturday to host a meeting. And thank you to all of our great hosts today, Terry Moore, Thomas Rackers, and Dave Vollmer for presenting today. Again, thank you for having me, and I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll hopefully visit the upcoming train shows in Keystone and Denver and Grapevine, Texas next month. All right. Well, thank you for having me, and I hope everyone has a great day. And thank you for watching the July ZoomTRAK meeting.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for everybody. And for me, it's good night from Israel. Bye.
Bruce, max attendance was 76.
Did we say when the next meeting is?
The date was, I have it saved, I believe it was this particularly in August. Was August 12th, correct? Or was it August 19th?
That sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah, August 12th. I
Okay.
believe I set that in my computer.
Thanks.
August 12th is correct.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon, guys.
All right, we'll see you later.
Shut
And I will
down now.
see all of you all later, hopefully.
Yep.
All right, have a blessed day.
Bye now.